Okay, well, listen, first of all, Mark, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me about, so the GP, the D, now the D is de Montana, right?
That is correct. Yeah, that is
Okay, see, and that's what I first, again, I'm so inept. That's what I didn't realize what the D was for. It was de Montana. And so I should know better than that, being a Canadian and officially bilingual.
that's right. You'd be more adept at this than I. Yeah, yeah, yeah. For me, it would grosse Preis of fun, Montana. But that doesn't quite have the ring because the Germans didn't control FIA, the French did. So,
Well, that's just because it's a bit of more of a fluid language, perhaps.
yeah,
French.
yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
much more, much.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, first of all, congratulations for, how can I put this, being the steward of such a wonderful event.
Well, yeah, well, thank you. And it's nice to be back. I think when we had our first chat for your channel, which ended up being the history of Mark in excruciating detail.
Well, no, it was wonderful. Are you kidding? Fantastic.
Yeah, but it eventually got to current projects, which has been the center of my, even before the pandemic, of my slot racing hobby, model car racing, I prefer, because I like to think of that they are actually models of cars.
They are.
Slot cars don't always have to be cars. Model cars theoretically are a car and they're a model of something. But proxy racing was something that started quite a while ago. And then I started having had some wonderful mentors who were doing proxy racing for a variety of reasons. And I gravitated towards folks who were like you, fans of, I call it vintage, historic open wheel cars. And for me, that's anything before, say, 1985. Anything, yeah. So the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, and halfway through the 80s. And after that, it's all crap. It's all they're great. They're amazing. They are amazing technological vehicles. But so I got into this and then had the privilege, because I got to participate in other people's proxy series. I said, I'm going to do one of my own. And so I was in the midst of, when we reacquainted each other, as besides just having a vendor buyer seller relationship. That probably was maybe the fifth. This may have been. I've lost track, John. The fifth or sixth year that I ran the series.
That's right.
There was a hiatus of a couple of years, but yeah. So that was all getting ready to go, and I think, showcasing the cars that I was entering for the benefit of your viewers. And I'm trying to remember. If you ran this, my memory is so bad. If you ran this on your channel, just as a recap for people who may not follow this sequentially, I asked John, by virtue of his passion for model car racing, his understanding of prototypes and the cars, his love of Formula One, to be the concours judge this year. Did we of course had an extended, did that go on your channel? I'm trying.
Yeah, we did a whole concours presentation.
Well, at that point, at that point, all of the cars, I think, might have still been with me before.
They were, yes.
Around the time of the first race, back at the beginning of this year in January. And John did a superb job and a difficult job of judging.
I'm telling you, those cars, and I only saw photographs. I can't imagine how, by the way, cheers.
Cheers
to you.
Cheers.
To you.
Cheers to everybody out there.
Well, and all the participants as well. You're absolutely right, because those cars, and this is not hyperbole. They were functional works of art.
I would agree with that. I mean, it was amazing.
And to every one of your participants, I raise a glass and say, cheers, and so well done. And it's not anything to be taken lightly. The amount of work that goes into creating something like that is really immense, and it's done from a place of passion and not a place of, nobody's winning any monetary prize here. They're doing this because they care and they have the talent to produce these cars. So good on you. Well done. Including you, who came in tied for first, I believe, in concours.
Yeah.
Well done. Well done, sir.
Well, and that was actually, the GPd Grand Prix de Montana has always been an invitational. Not not because I'm an elitist, although many people might say I am, but because I really wanted to seek out over the years folks who had a passion. They really loved to build.
But it's also, sorry to interrupt, but it's also an acceptance of the ethos of a model car that can race.
Yes, yeah. It had to be it wasn't a concours of static plastic models, and there's nothing wrong. I love building, as you know, static plastic models.
And you are very skilled at it, my sir.
Well, thank you. Sorry. But this has the other dimension of the fun of the engineering side. And as we discovered, between January, now just about 3 months passed, because we're getting towards the end of March now. During that time, we had the concours event, and we staged 7 races in 11 weeks. And we discovered that not only were these cars beautiful, but they were all pretty good on the tracks, and some of them were wickedly good. I say that with envy and awe, because my 2 cars were sort of in the pretty good, and I watched the wickedly good ones, and we'll talk about that, when we look at the results. But some of them are just, now, they're obviously going to have racing limitations because of the physics of they're running on narrower tracks and skinny upright wheels. But that's the way we want it. That's what the real car, and the real cars had 90 cubic inch engines, 1.5 liter, putting out at maximum in the final year a purported 240 horsepower from the Honda, but probably around 200 horsepower.
And to your point about tires, the tires used to last 2 to 3 races.
Yeah, and they had a contact patch like this, see, I'm off the screen, like this. Our passenger cars, have contact patches twice the contact patch of what these cars had. But so we ran the races. These cars traveled. They left my home and went to Indiana, where there were 2 races, in Fort Wayne, and then out in the country about 40 miles, a small place, just a friend's home who had a beautiful track about 40 miles from Fort Wayne, a little closer to the Illinois border, if I remember the direction. I was at both places last year, pre-COVID-19. I went with the cars last year for a couple of these, which was the trip of a lifetime. And then from there, the cars were boxed up and sent to Chambersburg, Pennsylvania, very near Gettysburg. And we had a race in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania. Then another race, because my first race was at my home. So that was race 4. Then race 5 was not too far away in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, the state capital. And then they traveled by car, meeting point to Northern Virginia, about 100 miles away, give or take, for race 6. And they were at a beautiful track. All these tracks, some of these tracks were just gorgeous. You can pop up pictures at some point that I've sent you of the various tracks. And race 6 was hosted and run by a newbie. Now, I use that term advisedly because Bob is about as much as is a newbie as like saying Neil Armstrong is an average pilot. I mean, Bob was really skilled, but he had never built a vintage open wheel.
Really?
But his car, but he also had put together a routed track, which he called Watkins Glen.
Yes.
Bob went up to the Historical Association of Watkins Glen, got the original, or got a copy of the original blueprints, and scaled his track so it would have the same gradient, the same radius of corners. And then when Bob staged the race, he live streamed it. So on YouTube, there's a 4.5 hour of him.
Well, if you like, I'll put the link in.
You can put, yeah.
Sure.
The link will be there for people who want to go over and watch. And of course, this year we had to do almost all of the race, all but one of the races, which was the third race, were done as time trials because we really couldn't have, and I understood that hosts really couldn't have people coming in during the time we were doing this. Vaccine wasn't even being distributed, so it didn't have the excitement of watching multiple cars go around at the same time.
Yeah.
But of course, it did prove because they were qualified, they were timed, and then the results took place. So after Bob hosted his race, and I think Bob's, and I say this, I've got to talk about each host at some point.
Oh, absolutely. Please.
When he decides to do something, it's like, I don't think it's like, well, see if anybody can top. It's like he does it all out. So you've got this magnificent setting, magnificent track, magnificent video. And he had never done a live stream before, but he had it all.
Oh, that was his first live, because I watched it.
Yeah, his first live stream.
He did a great job.
He even got a new race timing system because he had read that one would work better in terms of live streaming. But it was just magnificent.
That is awesome.
Then went on to Monza. Monza is a 100-foot Carrera double lane track that is patterned to look like the Monza before they stopped allowing them to run on the banks, after the early 60s. Yeah. And that is in Ohio. And that was the final race, race 7. Okay. And that race was concluded about, I'm going to say about 12 days ago. And Matt, who had been a host for me for a number of years, promptly packaged them up in the original Carrera aluminum case that they went inside a UPS big box. And I got the cars back and I did an unboxing. You can put the link to that one if you want to. I did.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Just to show people, I had not opened the box. I mean, I slid open the box, but I had not taken them out. Said, well, okay. I thought, boy, if any of these are smashed, it's like, whoops, no. They looked as pristine.
They looked really good.
As when you judged them, when I took.
Well, I think you saw the comment that I made on the video. I couldn't believe how good those cars looked.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if we were really sticklers for realism, it would require some sort of oil stains and splotches.
Well, you need scaled down rubber and oil.
Scaled down rubber and oil to emulate, the racing wear and tear. So that was the story. I'll just take you through a little history of how the ups and downs of the racing.
Sure. Yeah.
The accompanying graph for this would probably be that spreadsheet that I turned into a picture, which shows the concours and the six races with the points scored and then the final total. So I'll put on my reading glasses, and I'm going to say that in one sense, although we had an amazing time watching this thing over 11 weeks, after by race two, the second race, which was at Ken Wainert's track, Carrera track in Fort Wayne, it sort of looked like, okay, there's a Jim Clark car here, and Colin Chapman has a secret, and nobody else has the secret. Now, it didn't happen to be Jim Clark or a Lotus. It was a former teammate of Jim Clark in miniature who was driving the car in Ireland, and it was a BRP. And I like to joke that the BRP, Sherman Collins.
Oh, you have it. Oh, awesome. That's awesome.
Number 32.
Hang on, let me get a close up here just so we know here. There you go.
BRP BRM.
Oh, lovely.
It was on the podium in 6 out of 7 races.
Whoa.
And from race 2 through race 7, just to kill the suspense, it won the last 6 races in a row. It was everything that a tuned model racing car should be.
That's dominant.
It was that dominant. However, now that's not to say that there wasn't some good competition for it, but it won 6 of 7 races. So that car was just amazing. Now, at its heels, winning the first race of the season, and then, of course, not being able to take another first place, but taking in the next 6 races 3 seconds and 2/3 was Andy Rowland's beautiful Ferrari.
Oh, that was a gorgeous car.
Gorgeous car, yeah. This car, straight top line speed, was considerably faster than the BRP. But the BRP stuck, we searched it for hidden magnets. There were none. The car, Sherman's car was superb in handling. It stuck to the track, This car was the lightest of the bunch. Sherman's car was the second, either the heaviest or the second heaviest of the bunch. This car had the second or third highest RPM at the wheel. Bob Edwards measured all of these with a tachometer.
Did he really?
Yeah, this one had one of the lowest, but high top end speed does not necessarily equate to quickest car.
Right.
So this car was beautifully, I called it, this was devilishly quick. This one was devilishly fast, and it was, so this car took a first, it took 3 seconds, and it took 2/3, and it finished, because of all of that string of, it finished 40 points in our scoring system behind the first place car, behind Sherman's car. Now, the real battle wasn't for first place. It was between this Ferrari and this beautiful Ferrari, the 15663. Now, this was also built by Sherman. Now, for those people who are half-tonner aficionados will know, this was the car that Ferrari opened the 63 season with, their last space frame chassis. And by the end of the season, they were racing their first monocoque, the Aero. The next season, they had the famous 158 with the V8. Yeah. But this car and this car were neck and neck for 6 races. In fact, this car, in the following 6 races, from race 2 through 6, It had 3 second places and 2 bronze third places, but it lacked a win. The Ferrari Aero took the win in the first race. It got edged out by 6 points. So silver to the Aero, bronze to Sherman's Ferrari 15663. And so those cars really were the ones that you expected to see on the podium. They accounted for the vast majority of the podiums. David Mitchum had a podium with his, with his beautiful Seppi Seifert, Joe Seifert's Lotus 24.
Oh yeah, that's a gorgeous, and that's the Monaco version too.
Monaco version. This had a podium. Bob Edwards had a podium with his Lotus 25. And let's see. Oh, Bob Edwards had 2 podiums with his Lotus 25. So Bob Edwards' Lotus 25, David Mitchum's Lotus 24, and Andy Rollum's little Lotus 18. They were sort of in the 4, 5, 6 battle. And then everybody else was sort of like picking up scraps of points everywhere else. I did want to highlight a couple of other cars that are worth note. I mean, I focused on the elite of the racers, the podium cars. But I wanted to point out, first of all, I had an award that I established, which was called Most Esoteric Car. And this was based on, the judge was me. And I make no bones that I was the best judge possible for this under my rules, because it was like, this is not that hard to do. An esoteric car has to be one that did not appear in very many races, championship races. In fact, if it only appeared, the rules required it had to appear in 1. But if it only appeared in 1, that would be great. That's really a high scoring thing. Another very important thing would be no commercial slot car company, model car company.
Oh, right.
The car.
Yeah.
Why? Well, why would they if it only appeared in 1 race? So it almost is, excuse me, self-fulfilling. But that has to be, that's going to count for a lot. And then third point, which is, because those things those are not subjective. Those are, how many races was it in? Did anybody ever make this car? The subjective part is, if you ask the average person on the street, can you tell me what this car is? They'd go, huh? Or, but even better, if you ask somebody who knows something about racing cars, right, can you tell me a little bit about this car, and you name it, and they'd go, huh? Well, anything that meets those 3 criteria is going to win most esoteric. We had about 4 or 5 cars that were quite rare, and then, that had only that. I mean, we had our Lotus 25s. We had our cars that appeared for at least a full. In the case of the Lotus 25, 3 seasons it raced. I mean, it raced beyond 65. It was still qualifying for in the 3-liter era. But we had a couple cars that were pretty rare. The bigger distinguishing thing was, even though they hadn't raced, because of their name, who the builder was, the prototype builder, some of them had actually been made by commercial companies. And furthermore, I'd venture to say that most people who know something about Grand Prix racing know about Lotus or Ferrari. I think BRM, that's kind of close to my heart. Honda, McLaren, Brabham, but it pretty much, when the entries were solidified and people said I sort of already knew who was going to win the award. And John Prince
The ENB.
Yes, the ENB.
Oh, yeah.
National Belge.
Oh,
Maserati, a rebodied, revamped Emerson from the year before. They decided they would emulate the sharp nose Ferrari and make it even uglier. And I mean, make turning actually a kind of sleek looking car into an ugly brute. And then it was powered by an underpowered, uncompetitive Maserati straight four-cylinder engine. And John Prince, of course, scratch built this car.
It's absolutely lovely.
Yeah, and this car garnered a silver medal in the concours.
Yes, absolutely.
Because it's beautifully crafted and it's original and creative as all Dickens. Yep. So John takes home the esoteric car award with a really cool prize.
Well, let's give a toast to him then. Well done.
Okay.
I mean, just from choosing that subject, well done, John.
Yeah. And for you really fast guys that won the races, we're not going to toast you. But John. Okay. And that's sort of the segue to, of course, the event that you judged. So I brought out, I've talked about the winners and the podium. So you had a tough task, and that whole segment was covered at length.
I tell you, you know what? All of those builds, all of them, every entrant did such a great job.
Well, I will let you talk about these. These is the co-winners of the concours, tied for first in the point system, and I think you can there's one.
Absolutely, yeah. And all I can say is, the photographs you supplied were so well done. I cannot imagine what they look like firsthand.
So there they are, nose up.
Yeah, they're stunning.
Lotus 21 in green.
Yeah.
And Lotus, but in red because it's a privateer car.
Yeah. Oh, stunning work. Stunning. And you know what? If you photograph them in the right environment, you would be hard pressed not to realize them to be a model car. Truthfully.
And I think the thing that made it a challenge, besides having to do it remote, but you would have had the same thing looking at them in person, is, it was like picking among, because you could say the same, these cars, we could set up pretty much everyone with the right photography and the right setting and oh my goodness. How'd you get that beautiful color picture?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. No, so well done. But yeah, no, there had to be, those two were just absolutely stunning.
Yeah, I think the part that is translated better for me than the engineering side, I'm still working on that, is having a group of friends who love to build model cars that work, that run. It's made my game better in terms of skills. Now if I can basically, steal Sherman or Andy's brain for the engineering side, then, everything will have come together. But it was really a lot of fun. And when we launched the formula, the announcement of the formula for 2021, the COVID-19 had just been declared a global pandemic. So there was first of all, are we going to do this? Are the hosts going to be willing? In one respect, proxy racing is almost perfect for a situation like this, but it was going to probably take away the live action racing at each site. And everybody came through and said, we're up for it. I was really honored and happy that my race hosts said that this was something that really was something they looked forward to. And I want to say thank you to Ken, to Joe, to Sherman, to Joe, to Bob, and to Matt.
Well, you had a dedicated crew.
Yeah.
No, there's no doubt about it. Not only for the people who organized the races, but the people who, contributed with their builds.
Yeah. Yeah. And, we sort of plan, well, that's one of my things is, although I do a lot of things impromptu, with respect to this, I sort of, my planning side takes over. So needless to say, we'll be doing an announcement of the launch of next year's series. We've always felt it's best to sort of announce the series in this late spring of the year, let people have the summer and the fall to build the car, knowing that a lot of them are going to put it off during the summer. They've got other things to do.
Well, let's be fair. The summer is for planning, the fall is for building.
And the fall is for building.
Right.
So build the car. It's still, for those who want to use rattle cans, they can still probably get out and do that. And then the cars, it's always with cars arrive well before the Christmas holiday. That was particularly important, especially as the U.S. Postal Service is being systematically destroyed. Please leave that comment in because it is happening. But it was always like, no, it didn't want cars to be coming, especially from multiple locations during the holiday rush. And then launching and having the series run during the winter months. What else is there to do? This is a good thing. The builds are done, they're there. Somebody can tune in.
Not only what is there better to do?
Well, raise the glass.
Raise the glass to that. Exactly. Cheers to that. Yeah, you betcha.
So that's the series.
Well, first of all, kudos to you, the people that you invited to participate, because they all, not only did they participate and contribute, oh my gosh, the level of their workmanship was stellar. The level of their contribution to hosting your event was wonderful. And you know what? The results are a wonderful sort of exposition of the efforts that were employed.
Yeah, it was, I certainly felt it was worth it.
Oh my gosh, yeah. But it's like anything else. I mean, as much as we like to look at the technical aspects, both from a visual and from a performance perspective, the most important aspect is that you have a group of folks who are of similar minds and perspectives and passions. And to organize a group of folks like that and maintain that is a testament to you. And so I know they have thanked you, but let me on their behalf at least thank you for putting the effort through, because it is an effort. It's not done with any sort of leisure. You have to actually pay attention to what you're doing and care about what you're doing. So well done, sir.
Well, thanks, John. But I think we're kindred spirits in the sense that the same thing happens with what you do and goes into your work with your channel, with not just putting the video on Fast Sports, but the projects as you said, that you plan, and the excitement and the fun in terms of the planning of it, the execution, all of that. I think there's a lot of folks that share those those things and manifest them in different ways. For me, it's sort of organizing proxy racing. For you, it's, my goodness, it's the building and communicating how I did it and the history, the history of the sport, of the hobby and the collection and how to do this and how to do that. So, we identify with that. There are a lot of, this year was different. A number of the folks who had initially committed to the series, we were actually oversubscribed at the beginning. I had set a limit of 20 cars, and I thought right up until just before that we were going to have 18 or 19, but we had some dropouts along the way for a number of reasons. So there's certainly a number of folks I hope to see back in the series in more normal, I hope, more normal, better times. But
regardless of the environment, you still executed, you created, you conceived, created, and executed a most marvelous event. So well done.
Well, thank you, John. It was a lot of fun. I had great partners. I had a great concours judge. I had great race hosts. There were folks that, there were some folks that stepped up and did racing besides the race hosts. There were the folks who had hoped to build, still checked into the forum to see what was going on. I did get feedback from folks that this was something that was, in an otherwise prescribed life that we were all leading. It was like one thing to look forward to, So, I'm very pleased about that because, even in more regular times, proxy racing and model car racing is fun. We think so. But when there are other options that aren't available, maybe it becomes even more.
Well, it becomes more of a focus, and again, it's an ill wind that doesn't blow some good. I think it was a wonderful respite to whatever else people were having to contend with.
Yeah. Now there are going to be some twists and turns. I always like this, to hold surprises. So I'm actually not going to say what they are. I of course I know. That's one of the privileges of, it's so fun is why do I do this? Yeah, because I like being in charge. and I like having a secret for at least a little while. You got to be honest, open about this stuff. There are going to be a few changes for 2022.
Well, I was going to ask about that. Yeah, what does the future hold? Yes.
Well, the future, I really think that the future holds a return to the races will be run as races mostly rather than time trials. I think that we'll have, this series of venues was the same as last year with two extra venues. So there could be some changes in venues. Okay. We have one thing that will be the case. It will be historic vintage Formula One. That doesn't change. If somebody wants to run sports cars, great. Somebody wants to run Edwardian cars, great. If somebody wants to run the Silver Arrows, great. If somebody wants to run those spaceships that have been rocketing around tracks with computer, I don't know why they put drivers in anymore. I think the next step, John, will be this. The cars will go around on the track. The drivers will sit at control stations might as well, and pilot them. Why do they actually have to be in the car?
I think that's called slot car racing.
Well, they turn them into real slot cars. It's. I just look at I'm astounded and amazed. I'm astounded and amazed by the absolute brilliance of the the physical specimens of these young drivers in F1, and they are young for the most part.
Well, they have to be young because the amount of abuse their body takes during a race is unimaginable.
Yeah, yeah, and but the amount of information that's transmitted, it looks like a mission to Mars.
Well, that's just it. I mean, that's a whole other. You're absolutely right. That's a whole other aspect. Apart from the physical issues they have to contend with, they also have to manage the car as they're driving. Yes, I absolutely agree with you. Yeah. It's not just Jim Clark hoping that he doesn't have a piece of suspension brake.
Yeah. Yeah. Not to take anything away from Jim Clark.
No. It's
just amazing. So while it's probably my less. It's not because I'm a Luddite that I don't care for that so much. It's just more that the technology, the science that goes into a modern racing car is so above my pay grade in terms of what I've ever learned, and nor do I care at my advanced.
To your point, there seems to be a bit of a pendulum swing more towards the technology than the human input to make the technology work.
Yeah. And I get, we got, I mean, I'm sure that the drivers of the 40s who were getting a bit on in age in the 1950s, by the time the half-tonners came around, probably looking at askance and going,
I don't disagree with it. It was that
what are they doing?
It's that picture of Frolian Gonzalez at Road and Track looking at a modern Formula One car in the 60s going, in my day, the drivers were fat and the tires were skinny.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's why it's hard to compare drivers from different eras, because the technology has evolved so much in such a short space of time.
Yeah. I think that I think it would be fair to say that Fangio, if you reincarnated, or if Fangio came back as a 42-year-old, I think that was his age when he won his first, but I mean, he was the dominant driver of the 50s, and plopped him, as brilliant as he is, he probably would be just as overwhelmed by a modern F1 car as Leclerc or Verstappen would be if you throw them back in it's a different ballgame. Now, that's not to say that they wouldn't adjust. Of course they would. These are brilliant athletes, in their own way. But, you get geared, you no pun intended, to what you grow up with, what you learn.
And muscle memory and
muscle memory.
Yeah.
No,
I agree.
I've always felt when I look at the greatest drivers of F1, I say, I think I can pick 5 that I say belong in the pantheon, and they actually come from different eras. And I said, and there's a reason for that, because they were the dominant.
and that is true of any sport.
Yeah.
It really is. I mean, Gretzky now, even, he has said that as much as he would love to play in the modern NHL, a lot of these guys would be just making him look like he was just not there, because the skill level has just changed.
You wait a second. You said NHL? What's that?
Hockey.
What's that?
Okay, sorry.
Who the hell watches? I've heard of that. I've heard of it.
Yeah, it's
I think it gets about a 0.2 share in the United States, except up in Boston. I guess there's still some Rangers fans. Okay.
Oh, No, Bruins fans.
Bruins. Yeah, I said Boston. The Bruins.
Yeah, Bruins. No, no.
Rangers.
I can assure you that in Boston there are very few Ranger fans.
No, I was making the jump. The Boston Bruins, the New York Rangers.
Right. Yeah.
The Detroit Red Wings, as you know, because you played hockey. You play hockey. I mean, it's like, well, in the old days when there were like, 6 NFL or 6
teams. That's right. There were 6 teams. That was it.
Yeah. And there's and 100% of them were from Canada, but 4 of the teams were in the United States.
Well, again, that's kind of like Formula One in the 60s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's true. No, well, again, I can't overemphasize how wonderful a job you did with this event. It was absolutely brilliant. Thank you for asking me to take a look at the cars from a concourse perspective. And it was a tough job because they were all just lovely. And thank you so much. And I'm sure I'm not the only one looking forward to 2022 and seeing what you come up with as far as the formula for the next GPd Montana.
I'll just throw this out there. You don't have to commit because that would be fair because you don't know what I'm about to say. Right. But I will say that it would be the royal we are looking forward to seeing John Kitt participating in a different way in the 2022.
Oh, well, let's see what the format is, and perhaps I can put something together that would come up from sort of.
That is a fair response. Okay.
Someone I would be honored to be a breadcrumb in the hamburger of your event.
John, as always, hey, thanks for the evening, and I'm looking forward to the stuff that's on the docket for Fast Sports. I know you've got a lot of irons in the fire.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Great. It really is great.
Well, thank you for all of your support. I really, really do appreciate it. It really means a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, well, we've all got to do our best to keep promoting our hobby and seeking out like-minded folks who enjoy all of this and have fun.
Exactly. Yeah, and it is. That's the great thing about our hobby. There's so many wonderful and different ways to enjoy it. Right. Yeah. I mean, and that's the brilliant thing.
Something you should put your mind to, because you've got this skill set with your background, with your years in marketing and strategic marketing and all of that is, I believe that the one thing that could, a thing that could sort of really change the dynamic of model car racing is what I'm going to call the creation of the story. So your job is to figure out how to do that. And what I mean by that is if I look at it from the standpoint of the banker I was, the financial analyst. And so I say, well, how big is our hobby now? How big was it ever? You try and it's sometimes a little difficult, but you can sort of do some research. And then I compare it to something that is just gangbusters and multiple times the size of ours and appeals to an audience that actually is a fair bit younger than the average one in our hobby. And that is what I'll call the wargaming and model and fantasy gaming. And
those folks are really good modelers too.
Oh yeah. What they've got modeling, they've got artistic, there are people who they are just so much into the building and the painting and the art about it. But they've got the actual game, which is actually is so analog compared even to slot car race. Actually moving things with a dice. It's a very analog, ancient form of gameplay. But what they've got, you know, we've got either analog or digital slot cars. What they've got is the world that's been created, the fantasy world, the whole backstories. And I just look in awe at how they talk about this and the passion they have for it. And then I look in awe, like the company Games Workshop, which is a public company, the hundreds of millions of pounds they make a year, multiples of what any slot car company ever made, you know. Maybe Aurora with their HO at its heyday, if you took it into today's dollars for a couple of years, had revenues like that. Probably even then, not them. But the story, they've created, the hobby has created.
Well, it's created a world unto itself.
A world unto itself. And maybe that, you know, maybe that's impossible for model, because our world, if you're talking about fidelity to history, is a historical world. And the fantasy, the wargaming world that is really high is the fantasy side, as opposed to the historical wargaming. But that element really draws in.
That's a great concept, you know, and you're right. I should consult people like my daughter's age and her boyfriend's age, and who, I mean, you're right. They're into the sort of ethereal fantasy online game. That's a great idea.
Yeah. I mean, my son is an avid, he's avid with Dungeons and Dragons, but he also assembles and paints miniatures, you know, and he's very talented, but he just loves the whole broad scope of it. And I get that, and the industry that caters, the companies that cater to this demographic are so adept at creating more and more chapters. Now, of course, they're making it up, but they follow a formula. But so, and that's something that absolutely slot car race, the slot car hobby, the model car hobby doesn't have anything close to that. I mean,
oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah. So, but, and that's why our demographic, you know, is always, so when, obviously when we see somebody, you know, if you see, you know, somebody who's much younger, who's into this stuff, you know, oh my goodness, this is great, you know, because it doesn't appeal that much, you know, they find other things.
But you make a very, really, such a wonderful point, is that we seem to be rooted so much in the real, trying to represent the real world. Perhaps it's time to think about creating our own, using using those vehicles.
Yeah, well, I think if you look at it from the standpoint of, if you wanted to have a huge industry, if you wanted to have numbers that were really big, it would be borne out by that part of the hobby world. It would be borne out by the movie business. The all-time blockbusters over the last decade have been not regurgitated, have been comic book fantasy extravaganzas, all with their own creative world.
Yeah.
They bring in hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars in revenues above and beyond what any other genre will bring. People, they want the escapism, you know?
Yeah, that's great. Oh my gosh. So is that maybe a hint at what's happening for 2022 then?
No.
Oh, that's fantastic.
I don't need that crutch.
Awesome, Mark.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, and congratulations again on such a job well done.
Thanks, John. You have a great evening, a great weekend. I'll look forward to watching this when it makes the production queue. I'll look forward to tuning into your weekly videos. You've got some great stuff out there. It's a pleasure to be your friend. and colleague. Thank you for your support and help this year.
Absolutely my pleasure. And thank you for including me in your wonderful event. I really appreciate it.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Talk to you soon.
Take care, buddy. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I hope you enjoyed watching. If you did, please leave a comment, like, and subscribe.